right, welcome, Maui. I wish that's where I was right now. Um, I honestly don't know where to start. I have been, and I'm sure, I guess the reason I'm doing this is really therapeutic, for me and maybe for you, some of you as well, just to kinda, I don't know, talk it out a little bit. Um, and really to give my family a break because when I don't do these live streams, they have to listen to, to all of my pontificating. But I have been thinking today about something that happened back in the early 2000s, I guess. And I would imagine, those of you who are, relatively political remember the uh, the color revolution. That was the Orange Revolution, which was a situation in Ukraine when basically they had an election for president and they just did not believe the result. And hello, John. Good to see you. Um, First time live stream. What follower or whatever? Anyway, yeah, the Orange Revolution, and I guess that is what what's happening in Minneapolis just reminds me so much of that, where you've got this force that is supposed to be, um, all powerful. They got no rules whatsoever. They evidently believe the Constitution, that's some shit for somebody else, right? And the people in Minneapolis, Minnesota, period, I think have really shocked them. And what I am seeing is the behavior of people who are afraid. I'm not talking about the protesters. I just feel like this is not going at all like it was written in the playbook for ICE, DHS, and then, by extension, the White House. And I think when you can't trust the administration, the government, all governments lie about different things, right? But when you have it's one thing for Trump to tell you, do not believe what you see, because he's crazy. We all know that. And the bar, I used to say it's very low for him, but really there's no bar for Trump. Okay. He just can say and do whatever. And if you don't believe me, go on YouTube and find his speech this past week at the World Economic Forum, and I'll just leave that there. It's embarrassing, but also a sign of a person who seriously uh, is not there all the way. But anyway, I looked at, what was it, 50,000 people that protested, and I have spent time in Minnesota. When they say it's 20 degrees below, it is for real. We're not talking about wind chill. We are, uh, Edward Trump flew to Davos, Switzerland last week to represent the United States at what's called the World Economic Forum. It's a once a year thing. And I'm actually writing something about it, that kind of, gives the breakdown. But just imagine all of the, it's like the Super Bowl for billionaires and movers and shakers in the 1%. So as you can imagine, Elon Musk, all of the big investment banks, and it's something that had I not been in the investment business. I didn't realize it was a joke. I never assumed, but if I had not been in the investment business, I don't know if I would even know about that event at all. But anyway, I'm just thinking about the just freaking courage and moxie of the folks in Minneapolis. And like I said, I've spent some time there, and the people, you hear the expression Minnesota nice. It's a real thing. I mean, people in Minnesota, it's not the most diverse place in the world. And when I used to go there, this is back in the early or in the 80s and early 90s. Um, it was probably much less diverse than it is now. I don't think the Somalian population was, I don't recall seeing, I put it this way, I used to go and take clients to baseball games and stuff like that in what was then I think it was the Hubert Humphrey Dome or something like that. And I can remember being at a Minnesota Twins game and just kind of looking around, and it was just solid blonde. In a full arena. So yeah, but the people, just the nicest folks you ever want to meet, but they're not for no shit. And I just on a lot of different levels, and not to ramble, but I'm just saying, um, we have heard for now going on 10 years, these quote Second Amendment people talking all kinds of, smack. Folks in Minnesota got guns too. And so I was not surprised to see Alex Pretty, I believe is how it's pronounced, Pretty. I wasn't surprised that he would have a gun. I did not know at the time, in the beginning, that it was an open carry or concealed carry state. But uh, I put it this way: the first time I went to Minneapolis, school was out because it was deer season or something, or moose, or like elk season, or just some. So all the kids are out of school, right? They get out of school for like muskie, like fishing and all kinds of stuff. So we're talking about for real sports people and outdoorsy kind of folks. All that to say, didn't really shock me that much, especially when you think of just a few years ago, these same folks were dealing with the George Floyd murder. Absolutely, Nancy Werner Mosley, ice fishing. I knew people that had, like you said, a little house on the ice, and they fish, fish in it. They sit in there, and there's a hole in the freaking ice, and I never partook in anything like that. I was, call me a wimp, but duck hunting is as far as I've ever really gone in the hunting business. Yeah, fish hut. Let me get my terminology right. Thanks, Jason. So anyway, I just think ICE ran into a different kind of folks, and they were not prepared. And 3,000 sounds like a lot of people until those 3,000 run into 50,000, and there's not enough of them. And I don't know the full story on the police, but pardon me, my cat was asking for some attention. Um, yeah, I don't know the story with the police. I have heard um, the Republicans. In fact, Steve Scalise was on one of the shows this morning, and he was. You guys should know about this because I'm sure it's going to be something that we hear again. He was saying, "Well, Minnesota defunded the police." Well, no, they didn't. Nobody's defunded the police. They may have talked about it, and they probably should have, but they didn't. So I guess to back up to where I started, when you can't trust the government to tell you basic things that are true, I mean, we're we're in trouble. And I have lived through a few things. I'm almost 70, so I'm old enough to remember when Jim Crow was a thing. So I guess I'm sorry, my cat has gotten really interested in my pants leg down here. What are you gonna do? Live streaming, right? Um, and look, what is happening now is basically what black people have always had to deal with, but now it's gone mainstream, okay? So to see what ICE has been doing, the only thing that's somewhat surprising about it to me is that it's happening not just to black and brown people, but also to white people. And I think some of the stuff that I'm seeing on social media, and it's mostly from younger white people saying that, black people should get involved because, this is happening to you guys too. It's been happening to us. I mean, we've got like 400 years worth of history of this kind of thing. And what I mean by that is, police lying, police doing things to us and then saying, no, it didn't really happen, folks disappearing, and the like. So that's not surprising that the government would do it, but the impunity with which they are doing it to people who are white, now that's new, but it's not unexpected. We've been telling y'all it was coming. And when I say y'all, I mean the collective white folks, not every single white person. Some listen to us, but a lot of folks said we were just race baiting and we're, playing the race card and we're doing, no, we weren't. And now we were not. So I mentioned the revolution. I'm looking at my notes because I had to write this down. So in Ukraine, that was I think in 2004 and 5, and then you had the Rose Revolution, which I'm trying to recall where exactly that was, and then of course the Arab Spring, which people pretty much have heard of. And what's so interesting to me about now and then is this. Um, the first thing that these totalitarian, authoritarian states will do is they cut off internet access. So people can't exchange information and you can't know what's happening to me and I can't know what's happening to you, right? And so, I guess our our government has not taken that step, number 1. And we got some conflicting interests here because all the tech guys are here and they don't want to see, they're, I'm sure, making lots of money from all this traffic. But I think what is really got these guys stumped and the reason they think they have to lie so quick is we've basically got a citizenry that's the equivalent of a mass rapid response team. I was listening to when I saw what had happened at whenever it popped up, I was listening to, MS Now. No, I wasn't. I flipped to it to see what if they were talking about it, and of course they were. Um, They did not have as much information as I had. They were still trying to figure out what was up, okay? And that is why, and this is gonna sound self-serving, but okay, so what? This is why those of us that are independent, journalists, citizen journalists, whatever you wanna call what I do, it's why we're so important because we aren't hampered. And look, it's better to be accurate than fast. But I don't know what all the different layers that the Ali Velshi show has to go through for something that is staring us right in the face to actually get on television. But we don't have that. I don't have a team, I guess, fortunately for me and by extension the folks that follow me or subscribe or whatever, is that I started as a writer, um, in an area of research that required accuracy. Okay. Um, Before that, I was on a trading desk, and people don't know this, but as wild as Wall Street seems, we actually have rules. We actually have things you cannot freaking do. And one of the things that will get your license suspended like that is spreading rumor. Because for markets to work, folks can't be out here whispering shit that they think is gonna happen, right? So I was steeped in the importance of being accurate before I ever thought about writing, the first line in a research report or doing something like this. Um, so I just think this is a moment where those of us that are doing this, our importance, I think, has escalated substantially because I think it was Tim Miller with the Bulwark that said this, and I hadn't thought about it, but boy, he said that the the government is still, even now, they are still trying to portray this latest casualty as a terrorist, a guy that shouldn't have been, which is amazing, a guy that shouldn't have been carrying a gun at a protest. And I'm just like, seriously? You know? Um, these are the Second Amendment people, right? But now it's a whole different story. And what Tim said was something like, given all the lying that's going on, and everybody's lying, not one single person has resigned over this. Not one single person has said, okay, lying about a murder, that's maybe my red line. Nobody has quit, not a soul. I mean, think about that. So there are literally no people in the current administration that think all these lies that they are telling are wrong. I mean, let that simmer for a minute. Well, thanks for reminding me, Beth. Kyle Rittenhouse, I think was his name. This guy was walking around with a freaking, AK-47 or some kind of long gun. And heck, the police were high fiving this dude. So it's not even a black white thing. It's a whose side are you on thing, which actually sort of brings me back around to something I mentioned last week in a different setting. Um, just historically, we have seen over and over again, white allies are in just as much peril, or certainly close to, as the people they're trying to defend or look out for. And this goes all the way, the example I used was Wilmington, which is just down the road from me. In 1898, there was the Wilmington Massacre. And aside from killing an unknown number of Black people, I've heard numbers from 300 to more. Aside from that, the white allies and for those who don't know about Wilmington, it was at that time the largest city in the state. It was my majority black, black run. The mayor was white, but in a lot of the key positions, there were mostly Black people. Uh, tons of Black policemen, Black businesses. Because if you think about it, all the newly freed and slaves or enslaved, they had skills. And Wilmington, North Carolina, literally was known as the Black Mecca, if you can believe it. And the white establishment was not happy about it, and they basically ran Black folks out of town. Um, I saw some numbers, and if you want to read up on this, my all my posts are free to read, no paywalls. I said the other day, and I think it's a reason that it's important for those of us that do this to, paywalls. I understand why some folks do it, and that's their thing. But uh, in a lecture that I gave about a year and a half ago, I made the comment that there's no paywalls on propaganda. And think about it, it's always easy to find stuff that's untrue. You don't ever have to pay for the privilege of getting bad information. So anyway, I just compare Wilmington. If you look at MLK, he was always on the radar screen of the FBI, but when he started talking about, you know, getting out of Vietnam, when he started talking about having a poor people's march, where we're talking about more than just the interests of, what were then the Negro people. You start talking about including poor white people, then that's when you got trouble. Fred Hampton, if you know about his history, same thing. He brought together hillbillies from Appalachia and all of it. No, America is not going to have that. So now what we have is a situation. I think from the beginning, the the strategy was to get Black folks out here protesting. Not just, from day one. I think a lot of the foolishness that was going on was to get us out there. And I have read stories where, folks are like, where are the Black folks? And I just think the way this has turned out is really not something that they have expected. What do you guys think? Do you think I'm off on this? I could be, but I just think that nobody expected this kind of reaction in Minneapolis. I think they expected those guys to lay down. Maine. What's ICE doing in Maine? You know? What in the world? I heard the other day, I haven't really looked at it on the map, but Border Patrol, and if somebody in here is an expert, I think they are, on paper, the rule is that they're supposed to be like no more than 100 miles out, away from the border. Minneapolis is probably 600 or 700 miles from a border, so there's that. So Yanni says, we've been so segregated in this country that when you see actual unity, it's a shock to the system. Right on, brother. It is really, um, it's an interesting time. And I guess that's why I said it reminds me of like the Orange Revolution and the Arab Spring and all of that. Because I guarantee you, the royal family did not expect folks to rise up. The Middle Eastern family, they didn't expect that. So Someone mentioned the other day, or earlier today, sorry. I saw this video that someone had posted on the Substack app, and it was a Southeast Asian gentleman, and he was talking about all the old white women that were like, stepping up in Minneapolis. And he was surprised. But I can tell you the first No Kings March, Shannon and I went to it, and I just was expecting that there would just be a whole lot of, oh, young people that, Gen Z, Gen X, maybe, but Gen Z especially. When we got there though, and for context, I live on an island. It's north of Wilmington. It is a place where a lot of folks who don't look like me, from up north retire to. A lot of families have lived on the island that I'm on for generations. You know, grandma used to bring them here when they were kids, and now they've inherited, grandma's house and they live here. I was stunned. We were stunned to see the number of old, and I say old, older than me and my age and older, 70, 80-year-old white women. And there's a big bridge that connects us to the mainland. And so that's when we do the No Kings March, we march across that bridge, which is, I don't know, it's maybe close to a mile one way or something like that. But, you know, these elderly white women were the ones who showed, they were the majority of the people there. And I was really stunned. But I think, maybe if you clock it back, these are like old hippies and they're like, I can't believe I'm having to talk about this again, and they were pissed. And so the fellow that made the video was just talking about how in Minneapolis, and if you look, just looking at that video, I mean, there's so many women there, which in fact, looking at the video, it really tells you something about ICE because, if you've seen the extended version where, um, Alex Pretty, he's like in the street and, he's got his camera and he's just standing on the line and he's just filming people and, he's kind of directing traffic to come through. He poses a less than zero likelihood of doing anything with ICE. And there are two women sort of down from him, and they are the ones who are interacting with one, maybe two ICE officers. And what he does is basically he's looking out for these two women because the first thing that happens is one of the ICE officers pushes one of the women to the ground. They don't go at the man, they push the weaker person to the ground. And then they kind of are, manhandling this other lady, and all this guy's trying to do is help. That's all he's doing. He's got a gun, but he's licensed to have it. He's licensed for concealed carry, and it's in his holster. He's not, brandishing it, which is the lie that has been told. And man, I just can't stop thinking about it because I told my wife I've hunted, but I wouldn't shoot a dog like that. I mean, they executed this man and lied about it. They all knew because you can see the second that the guns ceased, everybody just starts backing away. You're right, John. They shot him in the fucking back. I mean, what kind of cowards are we talking about? Guys who don't even want you to see their face and they're shooting people in the back and kept on shooting. Now, again, unfortunately, I have seen that happen to black people. I wrote a story some years ago, um, about when I first realized that police would, like, just kill you for nothing. I was in the 10th grade, and there was just a kid that sat next to me. And, one day he didn't come to school, and it was just like, "Where's Pete?" That I don't even know if that was his name, that's just what everybody called him, and he had been murdered by the police with a gun, or actually, it was a sawed-off shotgun, if you can imagine, which had been outlawed. They weren't even supposed to have them, even, and we're talking about in the mid-70s, and, yeah, they killed this kid running away with a sawed-off shotgun, and I was just like, "Wow, police would do stuff like that?" But I have to be honest, and I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but I have never seen it happen to a white person. I'm I know it's happened, but I in this sort of a setting, I have never seen the police just straight execute a white person. And to me, not making one worse or better than the other, but for whatever reason, it's escalating. The disturbing nature of it is escalating. Okay, so not even a month ago, you're shooting a woman in her car. You're shooting in the pass or in the driver side window. You're shooting a woman in the head. I'm just and nothing's happening to these people. And there is a distinct likelihood that nothing will happen to these people. I mean, if you stack it up, I think my cats are throwing some sort of a protest, I'm not sure, but one of them is on a table, and the other one has been pulling on my leg, and then I don't know what's going on, but if I disappear from from the screen, it's the cats. They got me. Anyway, I mean, seriously though, just in a year's time, we're seeing things that we just did not some of us did not think could happen in America. So, if there's any I don't wanna say positive, but if anything can come out of this that's helpful, let's say, we now know how far they're willing to go. They will shoot our ass, and they don't care how many folks see it because, well, let's face it, they know their base ain't watching the news. I mean, they're watching Fox, but that ain't news. You know what I'm saying? They know they can tell their base anything. You know, I am just waiting for some MAGA hat wearing person to tell me that the Second Amendment ain't that important. So these guys will flip on a dime. So I saw that the NRA is kind of, you know, I won't say they're stepping up, but they had to say something. But we're concerned, all wrapped in it's the Democrats' fault. So that really makes it a whole lot less important. They have Yvette mentioned something here that's interesting. They have people in camps. I saw, if you're not following me on this platform, please do. I write a lot, but in the last since the first part of December, I have had a broken leg, um, that actually got in the way of my bum shoulder that I was trying to see about. And I've got something going on, just a lot of stuff, medical stuff, not life threatening, but certainly um, an inconvenience. And so as a result, I haven't been publishing long form stuff as much as I would like. And I have got a backlog of recordings of live streams that I've got to get out. But I have been, my excuse is that I have spent a few days in the hospital. Again, nothing life threatening, not surgery, but, some antibiotics they can only give you in the hospital. Um, and so the bottom line is I've kind of gotten thrown off a little bit. And then all these people getting murdered has kind of messed me up a little too. So um, that's what's up. Jane B. Oh, in North Carolina. Where, Jane? Or what part of the state? Don't give me your home address. But yeah, that's kind of slowed me down. I've actually got two or three articles. I tried to finish one in the hospital, but sorry. But I will get this stuff out. The reason I say that is Mooresville. Okay. Um, I say that only to say that stuff is coming. Mm. Um, but yeah, I'd be lying if I said that this did not bother me. I don't know how you can be human and not be bothered. But so if you start getting like lots of live streams from like a month and a half ago, you'll understand why. But it's coming. Um, anyway, I mean, I just felt like that's my wife behind you. She's baking bread, or she has baked bread. So guess what I'm doing next? So I guess now y'all know I'm not a robot. I'm human. Hmm. What kind of bread is that?
It's a sourdough.
It's just a sourdough, guys. Nothing. No big deal. There are gonna be sandwiches in my future, for sure. Thanks, Jane. Well, someone said I'm brilliant, just so you know. Oh, wait, they were talking about you. No, you guys, let me tell you, when people say nice things about me online, I show my wife. You know, we do what we can. Anyway, I'm going to ask you guys to follow me on this platform if you're not already. If you can, please think about subscribing. And if you really can, um, become a paid subscriber. I would appreciate it. Um, it helps. And I actually have big plans for this year. I mean, we all make resolutions. I actually have big plans. So subscribers will be the first to know. I've got a few things coming down the pike that I think are going to be meaningful, but we'll see. And all I know to do is just keep talking about this stuff and keep writing about it. I'll tell you something interesting that happened before I close out. I've mentioned many times before. Um, it's funny how when you work at a place, everybody's. I used to run a trading desk, and it's literally, it's like a long desk, and guys are just sitting like, you know, just a couple of feet from each other all day long, and things are happening, and you tend to get close with people. I have not worked on Wall Street or in the in that part of financial services since 2012. And there are there are 3 guys. I one of them or the other, I literally talk to every day. It may be text messages that lead to a phone call or whatever. One of them, every morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, I can set my watch by it. I'm going to get a text from him with a Bible verse. I'm not even that religious, but, you know, I'll take all the help I can get. But yeah, it's just a thing with he sends this Bible verse to probably 100 people and wishes them a good day and we'll kind of go back and forth and what's up this weekend and whatever. One of those guys sent me a message. I'm going to post it later. It's kind of interesting because that Chuck Schumer has said that the Senate Democrats are not going to move this. There's a budget bill, I guess it's got to get done by Friday. And Democrats are saying we're not gonna fund ICE. And so my guy, we had an exchange, and I thought it was kind of interesting. He sent me an article from CNBC talking about Democrats are gonna that we're hurtling towards a shutdown, and he said, so just like the healthcare debate, you can see here. He says, just like the healthcare premiums debate, I bet we see some defections from Senate Democrats to approve DHS funding bill. And I said, the ones who do are as good as gone. And then I thought about it for a second and I said, it'll probably be the same group, folks that either aren't up for reelection or are retiring. And he responded, yep, probably. So let's be looking out. I mean, I think Democrats should receive a deluge of calls and text messages or whatever, because honestly, any Democrat that is down for funding ICE right now is dead to me. I mean, figuratively, of course, but I'm just saying. And so you got to keep an eye on the same, what was it, 7 or 8 Democrats that undermined us. Because look what it got us, nothing. When we had this healthcare bill, if you remember, they sort of went behind the back door and negotiated with, um, the Republican side. And that's how we got out of the shutdown. And the whole thing was supposed to be, we're going to get this vote and some shit's going to happen. And none of it happened. Now, did it? I don't know. Maybe we got a vote, but folks still don't have any insurance. So you watch, the same thing is they're going to tee up for the same thing. And I am convinced that this is a little game that they play. I believe Schumer knows, he knows that he's got some folks in his back pocket and it's going to be, oh, I can't control them. And, oh, what are we going to do? But if they fund ICE after all this, ICE, Gaza, healthcare, any Democrats not talking about that, they got to go. They have got to go because we just don't have the time. I don't know any other way to say it. We just don't have time to fuck around with these people that are living in the late 90s mentally, where they think these guys are their friends. And just because I kept hearing this, I've heard it over and over, and I'm tired of it, where people get on, MS Now and, whatever network, and they're always talking about, I'm talking about Democrats now. They're always talking about Republicans who, in the cloakroom, talk about how they don't like Trump and how he's embarrassing them. I don't give a fuck. Pardon me, Shannon. I don't talk like this normally. She laughed at me. But no, seriously, these guys wanna be all buddy buddy, right? And they're just, yeah, they tell me, when Trump's not around, they really don't like him. I don't you know what? That actually makes me even more mad because, okay, so and you see what's happening to people. Some of these guys in their own districts, people are getting screwed over and shot at and killed and mistreated. And all they can do is, offline kind of, well, I don't like what's happening, but what can I do? Sorry. I don't want to hear those stories. When I get off here, I'm going to post. This is from an interview that AOC did. Some of you may have already seen it with Jake Tapper. So it must have been, I don't know, maybe it was yesterday. And the way she articulates the state of play is what I want to hear from every single Democrat. Or don't talk at all. Stay out of the way. I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear training. I don't want to hear, well, we just need to get them some body cameras because the guy who shot Rachel Nicole Good, I believe he had been in that system for like a decade. He was teaching people. He's an instructor. Okay. So what kind of training do you give that guy? And then I know some of the folks in this last incident, these are not new people. And not for nothing, I just posted something about this a couple of hours ago. There's an article in Slate. One of their reporters, the woman who wrote the article, decided she wanted to know what, what would it be like to interview with ICE. So she does an interview. She's got an unusual last name. A- According to her, there's not anybody on the internet with her same name. Her last name is like Jadid, like Jeedeed. So it's like Weems. It's just not a lot of folks running around with that name. She interviews with ICE. She doesn't hear anything for a few days, and then she gets a phone call where they're wanting her to take a drug test. And she says, I also have the video, and you can find it. Just look in my timeline. I posted this today. So they want her to take a drug test. She says, well, I had just eaten a legal gummy like 4 or 5 days earlier. So I knew I was going to fail the drug test, but I took it anyway. And I guess she didn't hear anything. And there's like a portal that, like you can go and see where you are in the process. They had hired this woman. She didn't even know it. They were showing her as having been hired by ICE. They hadn't done a background check. They didn't know if she was a sexual predator or, had a prison record. They didn't know anything. And they hired her. So, A, training doesn't matter because evidently they're training them to do what they're doing. These guys think that they're cool. Obviously they don't think they're going to get in trouble. When you got the vice president and the president and the head of their DHS all telling the same freaking lie, protecting you, that just makes you more bold. And I swear, I've seen the slow motion videos. I just don't know what frame of mind you are in to take a gun on another person who at that point is unarmed and just draw down on them like some shit you see in a cowboy movie. I just can't get my mind around it. So, yeah, we're in a different kind of fight, folks, but I feel like we're going to win this one. I think because we have to, don't we? We must. So with that, I'm gonna go make a sandwich. And with any luck, I'm gonna have a glass of wine, and I might even put my phone down for the rest of the evening. But, I hope you guys get something out of this. I just felt like I just needed to get it off my chest, and it's just not healthy to hold all this in. Um, and again, if this sort of interaction is helpful, um, it won't be the last, I'm sure. Um, Arturo Dominguez, who follows immigration pretty closely, he's a good friend of mine. He and I have a show that we've started, I guess, right around the Christmas holiday. It's called a show with no name because we couldn't figure out a name, so it's kind of like Seinfeld, a show about nothing. But it's about something, but it's a show with no name. But be on the lookout. Thursday at 6 o'clock. So we'll be doing that. And I think I'll probably have some other live streams this week with, on other people's platforms. So um I'm around. And thanks for the well wishes. As far as my leg goes, I've got x-rays this week. I feel like, it's pretty much healed. I'm walking on it. So but I've got some other stuff going on that not so pretty, but I've turned the corner, let's just say. So you know keep your heads up, people. Hope, thanks. I'm glad. No, my show is with Arturo Dominguez, but Adam Egberto and I are good friends, and I it's probably a high likelihood that he and I'll be talking this week too. So just watch this space, as Rachel says. And, take care, folks. I'll see you on the other side. Bye bye.